Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. As always, thank you so much for joining me here. Today we are doing yoga for rest. So it's a short practice, but one that is really important for me personally, and I think for a lot of people. When we go to yoga class, or even if we're practicing at home on YouTube like we are today, it's really easy for us to sometimes get caught up doing very active asanas, which is beneficial and is a good thing. But it's really important that we balance ourselves out by doing restful poses and postures as well, and take the time to really just be in our bodies and to feel the sensations that show up, rather than always practicing our yoga in a way that we are pushing and trying to do more. Sometimes we really just need to let ourselves be and actually do a little bit less and observe ourselves in that moment. So that's what this practice today is about. And it's not going to involve any props, because I want this to be accessible to you regardless of what you have access to and how much yoga you've done. Saying that if you do have props, you can use them with this video. Okay, so we're going to begin in a seated posture, and ideally I'd like you to come into a cross-legged position called Sukhasana. So what that looks like is crossing your legs at the shins and taking the shins a little bit further across each other than you probably naturally or normally would. And we're working towards getting our heels and our knees into alignment or stacked on top of each other. Doesn't have to be exact, but just sort of take your feet a little bit further across and your shins across each other than you normally would. You might like to lightly flex the feet just to help keep the ankles and the knee joints stable, especially if you do have sensitive knees. And if you look down, what we're looking to see ideally is a space in between our legs and groin that resembles a triangle. So your calf muscle, or the lower half of your legs, will be the flat base of the triangle, and the thighs coming together at the groin will resemble the point or the top of the triangle. So that's what we're working towards. And it might feel a little bit unusual if you're not used to sitting this way. So don't worry if that's your experience, that's totally normal. Wherever we are, we're going to ground down through our sitting bones. Maybe hands coming onto the mat or floor beside us. We might close the eyes, and we're just going to take a moment to ground down. Maybe take a slightly deeper breath for a moment, roll the shoulders, grow a little taller through the top of the head. And then just let your breath find a natural, or as natural as you can, pace for a moment. So just observing. And just checking in with the body as well. So as we observe the natural breath, just notice how the body feels. And check in with your mind, noticing what is, at the front of the mind today. Is the mind loud? Is it quiet? Is it peaceful? Is it agitated? Okay, beautiful. So you can either keep the eyes closed, or you may choose to open them. We're going to move into a forward fold from here. So we're going to keep our legs exactly as they are. And I want you to keep this lovely length in the spine that we've just brought ourselves into as we've arrived here. And we're just going to take the hands in front of the shins. And this might not be a very deep movement, so maybe you just take that very slight hinge from the hips. Maybe the hands or fingertips come onto the ground. Maybe the hands are actually up on the knees or thighs. And we want to keep grounding down through those sitting bones. And I want you to feel that lower abdominal contraction that I often talk about in these videos when I teach. So we're making sure that we're maintaining that alignment of the spine. We're supporting our back. We're not arching our back and letting go of our spine. Okay, so center is strong. We're continuing to press down through the sitting bones, and we're drawing away lightly through the crown of the head. So we're just trying to really create the space in the spine. And when you find the point that you think this is as far as I need to go, and for some of us, We might be up quite high still. For some of us, we might be lying almost flat on the legs, or if you do have props, you might place something under the head or the chest or the forearms for support. And when you've gotten as far as you think you have space to go, then I'd like you to soften. So I want you to keep that length through the lower spine, but I'd like you to let the head and the neck relax. Maybe the upper spine curves a little bit and relaxes too. And maybe if you're up quite high, if the spacing is right, you may bring your elbows or your forearms sort of onto the shins or the legs. Maybe you walk the hands in. And if there's any way that you can make yourself a little bit more comfortable here so you can rest a little bit more, then feel free to do that. And it might feel nice just to stay up on the hands with a slightly more active spine. So you can really choose what feels like the most restful place for you to be in this shape, while making sure that we're still in the shape and we're not abandoning the things that we are working towards. So taking some breaths in and out through the nose, noticing if we're gripping anywhere, especially around the hips or the glutes or the upper legs, and maybe seeing if we can let those areas ungrip or soften ever so slightly. And just allowing ourselves to be here, noticing if the intensity feels overwhelming, then we might ease off and come up a little bit higher. If we feel like there's not much going on and there isn't really any intensity, we might take ourselves a little bit deeper. So you can play around with the edge that you need to be working at. But I really want us to find a place where we can stay here for just a little bit longer, but really observe the sensations that we're experiencing, the things that are showing up. And we want to observe the things that are showing up in the body itself, so those sensations, but also what's coming up in the mind, and also noticing what's happening with the breath. How much regulation are we having to use to keep the breath even and calm and deep? Does it feel very easy to breathe? Does it feel very challenging? We're just taking one more breath. When you're ready to, we'll just slowly walk the hands in and up. And use your hands if you'd like to carefully unfold the legs. Give them a little bit of a stretch or a shake if they need it. This can be quite a intense and deep place to be. So even though our theme today is yoga for rest, some of these postures, they might still be somewhat intense, which is okay. We want to make sure we find that, or we work with that intensity that allows us to be restful in the posture still. Okay, so we're going to change the cross of the legs over now. So whichever leg you had crossed in front a moment ago, switch the legs around so the opposite leg is in front. And sometimes I do this and I don't make a mental note of which leg is in front. So if you get back and you can't remember, just swap them over a couple of times and just sort of see which leg feels like it hasn't been stretched. So same thing, when you arrive here, try to take the shins across each other. See if you can stack the knees and heels on top of each other or as close as you comfortably can, and then find that length in the spine. Let yourself just be here for a moment. So we're not rushing through any of our shapes in our practice today. Okay, we really just want to take the time to be in them and to feel everything that comes up. Even if there isn't a lot to feel, that's okay, we'll feel that. We'll feel the nothingness, if you like. Okay, so when you feel ready to, engaging those lower abdominal muscles, we'll start to hinge from the hips, maintaining the length through the spine, and just slowly easing ourselves into this forward fold. And it may feel very different on this side of the body. It may feel similar. You may get further on this side. You may not get as far. So seeing if we can have very little or ideally no expectations of what to expect. And just let ourselves move into our shape, working towards finding that edge. And again, playing around with, maybe you drop to the forearms, maybe you rest the forearms on the body somehow. Maybe if the height and the proportions are right, you may even rest your forehead in the palms of your hands. So you can really play around with any use of props you may have or use of the body to make this shape a little bit more restful. Okay, what we're looking for here is to make sure that the lower spine stays extended, the upper spine and body can relax. And then we'll find the breath wherever we are. And we'll just let ourselves be here. We'll just observe, remembering if the intensity becomes too much at any point, we can always ease off. And vice versa, if we realize we need more intensity, we can ease a little bit further into our shape. And we're taking one last breath here. So in your time, you can slowly start to just walk the hands up. And again, same thing, carefully unfold the legs, maybe giving them a shake or a stretch or anything at all that they need, just to reset. And we're going to slowly transition when we're ready to into our all fours. If you need extra padding under the knees, please feel free to place a blanket, a cushion, rolled up towel, anything at all so that your knees are comfortable. Hands under shoulders, knees under hips. And just very carefully and gently we'll move through cat and cow at our own pace. So maybe moving into this quite deeply, maybe not going very deeply into these shapes, just seeing what your spine needs. Maybe most importantly, just moving with the pace of your breath. If you want to add in any side-to-side movements, you can. Maybe some shoulder to hip might feel good to stretch through the side body. And just making sure that we even out, or we get equal, however it is we're moving in both directions. And when you feel ready to, we're going to make our way into a child's pose. So you can take any child's pose that feels comfortable. I'd recommend having the knees together or close enough that you'll be able to rest your upper body on your thighs. So if that means putting some sort of prop, if you have one between your thighs and your body, you can. And what I'd like you to do is sit back for a moment. For those of you with very sensitive knees, be mindful, don't sit all the way back if that's not possible. But drop your hips either onto your heels or as close as you can safely get. Think about your tailbone being heavy and drawing you down towards the ground. Hug the belly into the spine, so we're rounding out through the spine. And then keeping this motion of the belly button drawing back, then start to sort of dive down towards the ground. And if you can, you're going to lay your body all the way down onto your thighs. Your hands are going to stay down by your heels. And your forehead's going to rest on the ground. If you need something underneath your forehead in the ground, that's perfectly fine as well. And we're going to be staying here for about a minute. So you want to find your breath, let your shoulders be soft and relaxed. And again, just let yourself be here. And maybe with each breath out that you take, you see if you can let your shoulders and your chest soften and relax and round out a little bit more. Or maybe you feel the motion of the belly against the thighs as the breath comes in and out. And as we take our last breath here, you can slowly begin to bring the hands outside the shoulders or underneath the shoulders. So you can use your hands and arms to gently help ease your way back up when you're ready. And it may feel good just to sit for a moment when you come back upright, maybe closing the eyes. And just taking maybe a slightly deeper breath or so here. Beautiful. Option, if you'd like to, for a moment, just bring the fingertips behind the feet or toes. And just taking a very slight counter pose here. You don't have to move deep into this. You can come into the palms of the hands or stay up on the fingers. And just allow the shoulders to roll back. Open the chest for a moment. Maybe look up towards the ceiling. And if it feels good, you might just sway slightly from side to side. Not in a huge way, just gently, if that feels good. Just sort of moving into the shoulders here. When you're ready to draw the belly button into the spine. Coming back into center, walk the hands in. Okay, let's come down to sit once again. And I would like you to take your left leg out to the side and have your right foot come in anywhere to the inside of that left leg. Okay, and if you have props, if you're using things, you may like to put something underneath this knee if it's sticking up quite high so that you don't have to use these hip muscles to hold the leg. You might like to give it some support. And we're going to let the legs be as relaxed as possible. So we're not going to worry about having an active foot through that left leg. I want us just to ground down through the sitting bones. So just finding that length and that alignment once again. And we're just going to walk our left fingertips down our left leg, almost imagining that we have maybe two walls or panes of glass either side of this leg. It doesn't matter how open it is, wherever it is, that's your corridor. And keeping that length in the spine, we're going to walk the fingertips down and we're just going to let our body start to follow that left hand. Okay, so what we're looking for is a stretch through the side body. And even though we're trying to be somewhat relaxed here, as you move into this, think about lightly engaging that lower abdominal area so that we don't arch our lower back here and pop our chest open. We're hugging our core in enough that we stabilize the spine. Okay, so it doesn't matter how far you go into this. You might be up quite high and you might feel enough. You might be able to drop down onto your forearm. Some of you might even be able to lie your head on your arm and your leg. So wherever you can get to is perfectly fine. An option just to keep this right hand on the leg. Yeah, if you feel enough of a stretch and this is enough for you, you can close the eyes here. You can just let the head hang if that feels good. Okay, and breathing here. If you want a little bit more intensity, if it feels needed, you have the option to take this right arm up. Maybe the right arm just gently reaches towards the sky, or maybe the right arm reaches overhead. Okay, it may even come all the way onto the toes or foot if that seems like a nice place for it to be. So you choose what you want to do with this right arm, okay? Wherever it is, pick your intensity, make sure that you can work with your breath. Okay, making sure we keep coming back to notice that lower abdominal area to make sure that we're lightly hugging it in so that we stretch out the muscles safely through the lower back and side area. And we're just taking another couple of breaths here, noticing if we are gripping or holding anywhere that we can maybe soften into. And when you feel ready to, you can gently start to use your hands to help support you. Just start to peel your way up, slowly, slowly, slowly. Coming to sit tall. Let's gently bring that left leg in. We're going to extend the right leg out to the right side. And this base of our posture is probably going to look different for everyone. So just choose a place where you feel that you can comfortably sit upright is most important, okay? And then ideally letting that right leg relax. Again, if you want support under this left knee, if you have it, feel free to do that. Lengthen through the spine, Ground down through your sitting bones, and when you're ready, the right fingertips are just going to walk down that leg and letting that hand or those fingers guide us. Then it's almost like the rest of the body is just slowly being pulled down just as far as feels enough. Okay. And again, you have the same options. If you want to, this left hand can just hang out on the leg or behind the back. If you want more intensity, if that feels needed to get you to where you need to be to feel restful in this posture, maybe the arm reaches up or overhead, or maybe the fingers touch the toes. It's entirely up to you. So if you want to close the eyes once you arrive here, you can. We're seeing if we can just let ourselves be. You choose where your neck wants to be. It might want to look down. It might want to look up. It might just want to hang to the side. It might want to stay in more of an aligned position with the spine. Okay, so feel free to experiment. Just observe, what you feel, what happens to you in this pose, in different positions. Just another breath here. Taking your time when you're ready to use your hands for support and just slowly begin to unpeel or unfold yourself. Coming up gently. Beautiful. Releasing the legs. Again, give them a bit of a shake or a stretch or anything that they may need before carefully bringing yourself down onto your back on your mat. And as you come down, it might feel nice to let the knees maybe hug into the chest or the armpits, and maybe let's just rock that lower back for a moment, just massaging out the sacrum, the sides of the hips in any direction or movement or way that feels good and comfortable. And we'll slowly find a place of stillness. We're going to keep hugging the right knee into the chest. We're going to gently release the left leg all the way down to the ground. And let's just twist that right knee across the body over to the left-hand side. If we have the space, maybe opening that right arm out, maybe turning the head over the right shoulder. If you don't have a lot of space, you might bend at the elbow instead. And we want to find, again, a place that we're not pushing to the most extreme place we can go in this shape. So if you need to ease back a little bit, maybe you ease back. Your right knee or foot doesn't have to be on the ground, okay? If it's lifted, that's okay. Again, maybe you use your hand or arm to support your leg. If you have props, maybe you use something underneath that right leg. And just notice where your breath is going. And then see if you can let yourself soften here for a moment. We'll take one more breath here. And we'll use our left hand on our right knee to draw it in towards the chest, and then just tip our weight back into center. Releasing the right leg down to the ground, drawing the left knee into the chest when we're ready. Right hand comes to left knee or leg, and we'll just tip ourselves over to the right side this time. And again, just easing into this, seeing where do I need to get to? Do I need to move in and out of this? How do I find the place in this shape that feels most restful for me today? Because that may change each time that you practice. When you find a place that does feel restful, seeing if you can just pause there for these next few moments. Making sure that we're not gripping or holding unnecessarily anything in the body. In a way, seeing if we can sort of surrender to being here with acceptance. So trying not to fight the shape or the posture or anything that might be going on in the mind. Let's take one more breath here. And using our right hand, we'll draw that left knee just in towards the chest as far as feels comfortable. And then we'll just start to roll the knee back, tipping our weight back into center. As you come back into center, let's take a long stretch through the body. Beautiful. And gently bending the knees up. We're going to bring the soles of the feet to touch and open our knees out to the side into Supta Baddha Konasana. And if this feels very, very intense and you have anything you could place under the thighs or knees, like blocks or props or a rolled up towel, that might be very helpful here if you have those things. If you don't have those things and you open the legs and you think, oh, this is really extreme, then you might take the option to either keep the knees bent up towards the ceiling, but let the knees draw in towards each other so they can rest there. Or you might decide to simply straighten the legs instead into your regular Shavasana. This is going to be our final relaxation. This is going to be our Shavasana posture. So choose whichever of those, or these three shapes that is going to be most restful for you. Okay. Now, if you're able to, I want to invite you to bring your hands onto the belly. Ideally, your elbows will rest on the ground, so we're not having to hold the arms. They have support. And either closing the eyes or just softening the gaze. Can we let the breath return to a natural pace? And can we just let ourselves observe, what we experience while we're here? Remembering if the intensity starts to feel too much at any time, we can adjust, we can move. Just trying to maintain that state of restfulness. So not pushing through things that feel too much or unbearable. Doing whatever we need to do to be restful. You might like to use this time to also be in silence. So if you like to put music on while you practice yoga, that's absolutely fine. But I'll invite you, if you do have music going at the moment, maybe see if you can turn it off for this Shavasana. And just observe the sounds that are happening. Whether they are inside the room you're in, maybe they're outside, maybe they're sounds within your own body. Just pay attention to them. Be okay with them being there. And as you just listen to the natural sounds in your environment right now, every so often bring your awareness back to your breath, the natural breath. And the sensations in the body. If you have some extra time that you can remain here, I'll invite you to do so if that feels right. But if your time for practicing yoga is drawing to an end, then I'll invite you to maybe bring the palms together at the heart center into Anjali Mudra as you are lying down. And just taking a moment here, maybe letting the breath deepen. Taking a moment to thank yourself internally for prioritizing the time in your day to practice for yourself. Maybe also internally taking a moment to say thank you and show respect to the peoples and culture that the practice of yoga originates from. May it continue to be a practice for everyone that brings more peace and joy and light. So thank you very much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again soon.